Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wall Off Podcast, where today I interviewed Rob Smith from the Smith Maneuver, if you guys are familiar with that term. So his father was actually the person who created it, and it was really interesting hearing from him. He created it in the 80s, so it's a Canadian thing that applies specifically to us because as some of you might know, your principal residence, the mortgage on it, is not interest deductible. So this maneuver actually allows you to create an interest deduction for your primary residence. So it's beneficial to you in several ways, and we discuss some of the tactics, some of the strategies around that, and the whole concept or the whole idea of this is to kind of reduce your amortization and to increase the returns for on your personal residence and overall just to increase your net worth. So we cover a lot of good things in here. I hope you'll enjoy the show. And as always, I just want to remind you that I appreciate you listening to this. And my goal is to get this message out to as many people as possible. So if you know anyone who might benefit from this podcast, be sure to share it with them. Let's get the message out there. And if you are interested in getting some more real estate information, you can go to welloff.ca/report. I've got a bunch of good stuff in there for you. You can download everything for free. So make sure to check it out and always reach out to me if you have any questions. My information's on the website, welloff.ca. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I am here with Robinson Smith from the Smith family, and you guys will know what I'm talking about soon. So Robinson is a financial strategist, speaker, best-selling author, and he is part of the family that created the Smith Maneuver. So that's the whole Smith part I was talking about. So his goal is to educate Canadian homeowners on how to create wealth from their mortgage, and then also trains financial professionals on the strategy in order to provide good advice to their clients. So Robinson, welcome to the show. There's a lot more to your story, and we'll dive into that soon.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, George. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Do you prefer to be addressed by Robinson or Rob, first of all?
Oh, you can go ahead and call me Rob.
Rob. Okay. A little bit less formal there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way I like to start off, Rob, I like to ask you a little bit about your childhood, maybe a couple things you remember from when you were young.
Well, sure. I grew up in Bolton, Ontario. Well, grew up until I was about in grade 4. We moved over to the West Coast to Vancouver, and so that's where I did most of my schooling. Lovely BC coast here. My my dad developed this financial strategy back in the mid '80s. So I do remember sitting around the dinner table as a young kid, just focusing on having fun and chasing girls. And meanwhile, he's sitting at the dinner table talking about the Smith Maneuver, making mortgages tax deductible. So for me at that time, it wasn't the most interesting conversation, but I have been surrounded by this financial strategy for many, many years. So West Vancouver, went to university here in Victoria, got a double major in economics and Chinese studies, spent some time overseas in China studying and working, various positions, Canadian Embassy. I was also vice president of a boutique investment firm called the Ballot Group in Beijing. And then I completed my MBA at Simon Fraser University in international business and got into the workforce. And here I am.
Awesome. Was your dad a financial advisor as well, or kind
Yes.
of in that space?
Yeah, he was. He founded, he co-founded Granville West Group, which is still around today, based out of Vancouver. So they're a full service financial firm. They brought together a bunch of different types of financial professionals: insurance, investment, tax and estate planning, that sort of thing. So that's where he was when he came up with the strategy.
Awesome. Cool. So what makes you want to stay on the West Coast? You said you grew up in Bolton, so kind of in the area that we're in here. What made you want to go out there and stay there?
Well, the summers are pretty nice here and the winters aren't as bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
true.
and doing most of my growing up here, it's where my crew is. It's where my
Mhm.
people are. So,
Right.
yeah, so I really do enjoy it out here, although it's always nice to get back east and visit everybody in Toronto. In my past experience as an investment advisor, I've got a lot of contacts in Toronto that, my wholesalers and professional contacts. So it's always nice to head back there in the summertime and see everybody.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm curious. I remember, as I was telling you before we started this interview, that I learned a little bit about the Smith Maneuver when I was studying at the University of Toronto, doing an economics degree, but I honestly don't remember very much about it. I just remember that there's a way for you to turn your mortgage into a tax deduction, I believe through a HELOC potentially, or I forget exactly what it was. So I don't know if you want to kind of touch on that and explain it a little bit.
Yeah. Basically, going back a few years, back in the mid 80s, when my dad came up with this, he was interested in the fact that the Americans could deduct the interest on their mortgages where we Canadians could not. And of course, he didn't think that was very fair. So he did a lot of research, a lot of reading. He read the Tax Act, which is not a fun thing to do. But in any event, he came up with the strategy, based on the principle that in Canada, if we borrow with the reasonable expectation of generating income, we can deduct the interest. So if we borrow to consume, so if we borrow to buy cars, vacations, groceries, gas, we cannot deduct the interest. There's no expectation of generating income. So we're acquiring debt which is relatively expensive. That's problem number one. Problem number two is these assets that we're buying with this borrowed money that is expensive depreciate or vanish in value over time. Cars depreciate in value. You go on vacation, you finish your vacation, that's done. Groceries get eaten, all that sort of stuff. So non-deductible debt is not the way to go. But the way to convert your mortgage to tax-deductible debt is based on the principle, as I said, that if we borrow to invest with a reasonable expectation of generating income, we can deduct the interest. So that means we're borrowing to purchase assets. We're investing. We're purchasing assets which have a very good likelihood of increasing in value over time. So there's benefit number one. We're buying an asset which is going to improve our net worth. Benefit number two is because we're buying this asset, which has a potential to generate income, these investments, we're able to deduct the interest, which means we typically, if we get our taxes taken off our paychecks every 2 weeks, by tax time, the government looks at our tax return and says, oh, we took too much money from you every 2 weeks. We're going to have to send you money back. So that means the real cost of this borrowing is much cheaper than borrowing to consume. And so the Smith Maneuver takes advantage of these principles, the two different types of debt, and enables the homeowner to firstly start to generate tax relief immediately as soon as they implement the strategy. Secondly, because of this tax relief, they're receiving new money which otherwise they wouldn't have available to them. So they take this money and they apply it as a prepayment against their mortgage once a year. And by prepaying the mortgage, it's gone faster, this non-deductible mortgage debt. And in order to generate the deductions, in order to generate these tax refunds, we must be buying assets which are considered investments, therefore likely increasing in value over time. So there's three benefits that happen. They happen simultaneously. They start right now and they build over time exponentially. And the fundamental principle, like when we talk about good debt versus bad debt, some people classify good debt as debt that was used to acquire assets which appreciate over time, and bad debt is assets which depreciate over time. And in my context, that's not entirely correct, because when we borrow to buy our home, when we get a mortgage, we're buying an asset that is likely going to increase in value over time. But the fact is, we don't expect to generate income from the house in which we live. And so the borrowing against that mortgage is not tax deductible. So I classify good debt as tax deductible debt, and bad debt is non-deductible debt.
Okay. Yeah, so we touched on a lot of stuff here. It sounds like for the most part, what you're describing is leveraging what you have, an asset that you currently have, for example, your home, and then purchasing a tax deductible asset through that leverage. And
Yes.
that's kind of the point of the Smith Maneuver. But I guess my question is, are you able to apply the Smith Maneuver to your primary residence? So making your primary residence tax deductible without investing that money into another asset?
Well, when we borrow to buy our house, the interest that we're paying that bank on that mortgage is not tax deductible. In order to generate tax deductible debt, there must be some borrowing with a reasonable expectation of generating income. So the way the process works is, if you've got the appropriate mortgage, it does require the right type of financing. Whenever we make a payment against that mortgage, so a regular mortgage payment of $3,000, let's say $1,000 reduces the principal, this type of mortgage, the Re-Advanceable, allows us to re-access that equity that we just created, that $1,000. And so what most Canadians do is they pull that out to make car payments each month,
Right.
or buy boats, go on vacation.
Yeah.
But we're borrowing to invest. So in order to generate tax deductions, you do need to buy an asset. And in this case, these are investment assets. And there's a wide universe of potential investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, index funds, and your business, somebody else's business, investment real estate. So as long as there's a reasonable expectation of generating income, you can deduct the interest. So if you're not buying an asset with the newly created equity that you're generating via the mortgage paydown, whether it be the regular mortgage payment or using any of the accelerators, then you're simply paying off this debt and creating equity which you're not putting to work.
Sure. Okay, so just to kind of sum it up for maybe certain people who don't understand what a Re-Advanceable mortgage is, but there are certain mortgage types that allow you, as you pay down your principal, it becomes available to you in the form typically of a home equity line of credit. So every month that your mortgage is paid down, that principal amount gets added to your HELOC, and then some people you're saying are using those funds to buy non-deductible debt, like cars and boats and whatever, whereas you're saying you should use those funds to buy something like either stocks or another property where you could deduct the interest that you're paying on those funds, and it benefits you in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to a solid understanding of debt. And not many Canadians really have a good handle on this. It's not something that your typical Canadian is taught as they're growing up, unless you go to business school. But and a lot of Canadians have this type of mortgage already, this Re-Advanceable mortgage, whether they know exactly why they got it or why the bank lender put them in this product in the first place. But they see this increasing limit on this line of credit each month because they're making the regular mortgage payment. And they say, wow, I can borrow $1,000. That's great. And so they do that. They buy a car, they buy a boat. They continue to do this. All they're doing is reducing non-deductible debt on one side of the mortgage when replacing it with non-deductible debt on the other side of the mortgage. And their debt is not changing. So they're going to end up with keeping this non-deductible, this expensive debt, maybe forever. So this is what we call wealth destruction. But the other type of debt is tax-deductible debt. And when we're replacing the non-deductible debt on one side of the mortgage with tax-deductible debt on the other side, as we talked about, you necessarily, in order to generate the deductions, have to be acquiring an asset which is classified as an investment, which is going to grow over time. So this is wealth creation. And this is what the wealthy understand very well. They truly understand debt. They use it to their advantage. They embrace debt, but they embrace the right type of debt.
Right. Yeah. As long as the return on your investment is greater than the interest you're paying for that debt, then it makes sense to do it.
And this is a tricky question, because what most people fail to take into consideration is, let's say I'm borrowing at 4% and I'm investing in something, and let's say the investment earns 4%. A lot of people will say, well, you're at break even here. As soon as you start earning 3.99% on your investments, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the case, because this 4% that you're paying on this borrowed money, because it's tax deductible, the real rate of interest is much less. Like if you're at the 50% tax bracket, because of the deductions, it only costs you 2%.
Right.
And if we can't make 2%, then we're all in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, for sure. So there's multiple benefits to applying this strategy.
Well, that's right. And it's important that you understand all the different nuances of it, because if you don't, then it may not make sense, and you might not, truly pursue looking into the strategy. So there's a lot of education that is required. I came out with my book, Master Your Mortgage for Financial Freedom, about a year ago. And hopefully that does a good job of explaining the two types of debt. But there's a real difference in these two types of debt, and that's what makes the difference between having an opportunity to become wealthy or staying not wealthy.
Yeah, for sure. So we've covered kind of the basics here, and I think a lot of people already understand, like they understand the benefits of leveraging their current assets to generate more wealth. But is there anything about the Smith maneuver that maybe like some tricks or some tips that you have that can help people maybe get beyond the basics a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, firstly, let's say I want to implement the Smith maneuver, but I don't have the right type of mortgage. So I go talk to a Smith maneuver certified professional mortgage broker. We've got SMCP mortgage brokers across most of the provinces. But we go and we get our mortgage refinanced into the appropriate mortgage. At that point in time, there's an opportunity potentially for an equity takeout. Maybe you can go buy a rental property, use that as a down payment for the rental property. But this is what I'm describing here is one of the accelerators. And there's 5 accelerators. So at this refinancing, I have the ability maybe to pull out some equity above and beyond what my mortgage balance is. I can pull out 50 grand, 100 grand, depending on the house values and what they've done. And now I can prime the pump with this. I can pull this money out, let's say it's $50,000, and I can invest in securities. I can invest in real estate. I can invest in any number of things. And what that does is, while this is additional borrowing, this is borrowing that I didn't owe before I implemented the strategy. What this does is it generates significant tax deductions right off the bat. And these tax deductions therefore lead to a larger than otherwise refund each year. So I'm getting out of my mortgage faster. Now, the other accelerators, there's the debt swap, there's cash flow diversion, the drip accelerator, the cash flow dam. And if we want to extend this example of the prime the pump accelerator, if I took $50,000 out and I use it as a down payment on investment property, now I have a rental property, I put renters in, and each month they give me, say, $3,000 in rent. Well, what most Canadians do is landlords, they'll take that $3,000, say thank you, and they turn right around and make the mortgage payment on that rental property. But they're missing a very, very large opportunity, and that is, if this rental property is in a proprietorship, and I can take that $3,000 in rental receipts and I can use it as a prepayment against my own mortgage, the house in which I live.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can reborrow this $3,000 thanks to the special mortgage product I have, and then I service the rental expenses on that property, the mortgage, maintenance, whatever it might be. So I'm not using any additional funds from my own pocket. I'm still getting $3,000 in from rent. I'm still paying $3,000 in expenses, but I'm making it work for me more than once. And if I'm prepaying my mortgage by $3,000 a month, we're seeing amortizations go from 25 years on that non-deductible mortgage debt down to less than 10.
Okay.
So the prime the pump in conjunction with the cash flow dam, maybe you already have a rental property, maybe the prime the pump allows you to get a second, whatever the case may be. But that doesn't only apply to rental properties. This is the cash flow dam accelerator. I can also use my home-based business proprietorship. The income from that, prepay my mortgage, reborrow, and service the expenses. So, and the cash flow diversion, the debt swap, the drip accelerator, none of them require any new additional funds from my pocket on a monthly basis. So before I'm doing the Smith maneuver, if I've got a $2,500 monthly mortgage payment, after I'm doing the Smith maneuver and some or all of these accelerators, I'm still only coming out of pocket $2,500 a month.
Okay.
So this is where the power comes in, because it doesn't reduce our lifestyle. It doesn't take extra cash from our pockets on a monthly basis, but it allows us to generate these tax deductions, eliminate this non-deductible debt soon, and also feel the power of compound growth by investing now rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just want to clarify because obviously we just covered a lot. But if I understood correctly, you're saying that let's say there's a scenario where you have a primary residence and you have a rental property and you have a re-advanceable mortgage on that rental property. As you're paying down the mortgage each month, are you using the access to the HELOC from that rental property to pay down your own personal mortgage? Is that what you were saying?
Not exactly. Now, it is the case that having a re-advanceable mortgage on my rental property can be to my advantage as well. But I'm strictly talking about having that re-advanceable mortgage on my principal residence.
Okay.
So regardless of what type of financing I have on my rental property, I'm still receiving rental income, and I'm still having to service that mortgage on that rental property. But those rental receipts I receive each month, I make a prepayment against my own house, the house in which I live.
Mm-hmm.
And via that re-advanceable mortgage on my principal residence, I am able to get back at that $3,000 prepayment and then service the rental expenses.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting.
the Smith Maneuver is is a debt conversion strategy. It converts
Mm-hmm.
non-deductible debt to deductible debt. But and that means we're converting the debt on our principal residence. We don't have to have a rental property. If we don't, or we don't have a home-based business, then the cash flow dam is not available to us. The cash flow dam is simply an accelerator, right?
So
Now,
can you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, if I have a re-advanceable mortgage on my rental property as well, to further complicate things,
Yeah.
I am able to access any equity that I create by making that monthly mortgage payment against my rental property. I'm paying down that mortgage balance, but I then, because of the re-advance feature, have access to that as well, and I can pull that out to put it to work.
Mm-hmm.
So things get very powerful very quickly, as long as you are working with someone, a financial professional who's been specifically trained in the Smith Maneuver certified professional, who knows how to implement your home financing, your rental property financing, who knows how to direct the cash flows, who knows how to tell you what to do and when to do it and with how much.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you kind of walk us through what that would look like for a practical example? How much money would somebody actually be saving or generating extra wealth? I don't know if I can throw some numbers at you and you can kind of give me an idea.
Well, certainly, people who are just listening aren't going to be able to see this, but we'll talk our way through this.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to give me an annual income, George, I can plug it into the calculator here that I've got open.
Like what kind of income are you talking about?
150,000 a year employment income.
Oh,
like
employment income. Okay,
yeah.
Sure. Let's say 100,000 to keep it simple.
Okay. So 100,000. Now this person has a rental property. Can we agree on $36,000 in rental receipts each year?
Sure.
Okay. And rental expense, let's say 34,000. So they're running a bit cash flow positive.
Okay.
All right. So just by inputting that, that's the first page of the calculator. Unfortunately, we can't see it, but how about a 750,000 house value? This is the house in which I live.
Sure.
Okay. And a $400,000 mortgage balance. Sound reasonable?
Yep.
What interest rate on that mortgage would be appropriate?
Let's say 2.5%.
2.5%. 25-year AM.
Sure.
Okay. And on the re-advanceable line of credit side, prime plus a half. Sound reasonable? Okay. 2.95?
Sure.
Okay. Now on the investment side, we can select our forecasted growth rate. The calculator defaults to, 8%, but do you feel more comfortable with 7 or 6 or?
What is this again?
The investment growth rate of my portfolio.
Sure. Yeah. Let's say 7%.
7? Okay. So basically what we're looking at with just the plain Jane scenario here. So this is not using any of the accelerators.
Okay.
All we're doing in this case is using the regular monthly mortgage payment. So when that mortgage payment goes, the portion of that will go against principal. In this case, $962 will go against principal.
Okay.
Well, that means I can reborrow that $962.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, the tax deductions that I will earn over the course of this 25-year amortization are just over $131,000. Based on my marginal tax rate, which we've inputted thanks to the annual employment income, I'll receive $50,000 over this period of time from the government in refunds that otherwise I wouldn't have received. And my net worth improvement is projected to be $340,000 So a $740,000 investment portfolio, we offset by the fact that we've converted non-deductible debt to deductible debt. So I still have that debt, but when we subtract that from the $740,000 investment portfolio, we've got a $340,000 improvement in net worth.
Mm-hmm.
That is without applying these refunds against the mortgage as an annual prepayment. If I do that, that net worth improvement goes from 340 to 428,000, and I'm taking 2.25 years off the mortgage. So instead of 25 years, it's gone in 22.75. And in nowhere in this scenario have I come out of pocket anything more than the regular mortgage payment, which I was making anyways, whether I was doing the Smith Maneuver or not. So that's $430,000 net worth improvement simply by restructuring what I already have and what I already have available to me.
Right.
Now, we've mentioned that we've got that rental property. If we cash flow dam this, that means that I can take $3,000 in rental receipts each month and prepay my mortgage, reborrow that to then service the interest expense on that, or the expense on that rental property. And by doing that, my 2.25 years, which have been shaved off my mortgage to this point, goes to 17.5 years shaved off that non-deductible debt. So that mortgage, which was going to take me 25 years to pay off, is now gone in 7.5 years. And my net worth improvement has increased to $625,000.
Mm-hmm.
And this is primarily because of the increased tax deductions that I'm generating sooner, and also because my rental revenue was $3,000 a month, but my expenses were $2,833 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that difference of $167, if my math is correct, to invest in securities for growth. So there's a lot of different variations on this strategy which you can implement. Some people may not have the cash flow dam available. Some may not have the prime to pump. But there are others like cash flow diversion and debt swap, which again require no new money. So it's just restructuring what you already have and what you have available to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to kind of sum it up in a very basic manner, by applying the Smith Maneuver, you're able to reduce your amortization, you're increasing your returns, and you're increasing basically your net worth over time.
Yes.
And you're not losing anything. It's not costing you anymore. It's just applying these strategies that you've come up with.
Correct. So to be fair, my father.
Your father, yeah.
But, some people might ask, well, what happens if rates rise? What happens if my mortgage payment, my mortgage interest rate rise, or the borrowing rate rises? And the nice thing about the Smith Maneuver is that we see balance here, because when interest rates rise, and don't forget, my father developed this in the mid 80s when rates were in double digits.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if it didn't work then, he wouldn't have kept on at it. It wouldn't be here today. But when rates rise, that means, yes, a larger portion of my regular mortgage payment is going to interest and less to principal. So I have less to borrow and to invest each month. But because the rates have increased, so have my tax deductions.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a better, so my tax refund has increased. So there's balance there. And when rates go down, my tax refunds get a little smaller because they're lower rates, but that means I have more to invest on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I take more advantage of compound growth.
Got it.
So there's balances. It's on both sides of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe one last question before we jump into the next section. What about, is this all legal? Is there any concerns for people from the CRA checking into this or anything of that sort?
Well, that's quite a frequent question by Canadians. What's the legality of all this? And that concern should be allayed by the fact that I have personally put employees of the CRA into the strategy on their own homes. Cops, judges, lawyers, accountants. So it is legal. It's 100% legal. It's simply based on the fundamental premise, which has been written into the tax code for 100 years, that if we borrow to invest with the expectation of generating income, we can deduct the interest.
Yeah.
Now, the story my dad used to like telling was, this was way back in the day before I was involved, many years ago, but excuse me, he was at his office minding his own business, working away, and in walk two well-dressed men And they ask his receptionist, okay, we're here from the CRA. We'd like to speak with Fraser Smith about this Smith Maneuver thing he's doing. So his assistant shows him into the office, and Fraser says, hello, have a seat. And he pulls out his piece of paper and his pencil, and he starts explaining the Smith Maneuver. And a little bit into the explanation, one of the guys leans forward and says, Mr. Smith, would this work with a $70,000 mortgage? So and they left happy, and Fraser never heard from them again, which you're not going to get any bigger endorsement from the CRA than that.
Right.
So,
right.
Yes, it's been in continual operation, the strategy, since the mid-'80s.
Yeah, if it wasn't legal, I don't think they would have been teaching it at my university.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so that's fair. Before we jump into the next section, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything we haven't covered?
Well, I think we'll see what the next section brings.
Okay. All right. The next section is a random 5. So I'm going to ask you 5 random questions, and you're just going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, before we do that, then, what I would like to say is, for anybody listening who is interested in this, the website is smithman.net. You can get my book there. You can get the calculator there. We have a homeowner course there. But if you're interested in learning more and you don't want to spend $24.95 on the book, you go to the library and check it out for free.
Cool.
Just educate yourself. An educated Canadian is a better off Canadian. So there's a lot of resources out there. Please do not turn to the internet for information. It is a rat's nest. But yeah, www.smithman.net. There's also some frequently asked questions there.
Yeah, we'll include your information in the show notes as well in case anyone's interested in checking it out.
Great.
Okay, so Rob, random 5. Number 1, what will be your next big purchase?
My next big purchase, we're looking at building a home. So it's probably going to be a piece of land.
Cool.
Yes.
Well, good luck.
Thank you very much. I'm going to need it.
Yeah. Number 2, if you could have dinner with any living person, who would you choose?
Dinner with any living person. Oh, man. I have to say it would be fascinating to sit down with Trump for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
it would be fascinating.
I think I've heard that one before, but yeah, definitely. I'm sure a lot of people would find him interesting. Number 3, what's your favorite kind of weather?
Favorite kind of weather, 25 degrees, sunny, light breeze coming off the Pacific.
Awesome. Sounds like what you get to experience regularly.
A couple months of the year anyways.
What's the weather like right now? Like, what's the temperature at?
Oh, we're probably about 7 or 8.
Okay, not bad.
A bit of sunshine poking through.
Yeah, that's okay. If it doesn't get much colder than that, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Number 4, what should children be taught at school to help them prepare for the real world?
This is actually a close one for me. I'm working with I've been involved with an organization which is revolutionizing the way children are taught. Not just what they're taught, but the way they're taught. It's based on them inquiring about what they want to learn, inquiry-based learning. As far as what should they be taught, they should be taught about personal finances.
Yeah.
100%. There's a real big gap on real world education and learning as regards personal finances, and that's dangerous because as soon as a kid gets to university, they're surrounded by the credit card companies and they don't know anything about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So personal finances, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Credit cards, then you have student loans. There's all sorts of things that can get you in trouble really young, and then you get stuck.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opportunity that kids just miss because they aren't aware, like where to save what does come in when you're a child or young adult, and how to save it and how to allocate. So it's a big problem, I think, not just in Canada, but all over the place. And it's something that certainly should be addressed.
Absolutely. Okay, so number 5, what success principle do you live by?
Do it. um, and I still have trouble with that one every once in a while, but just getting down to it and doing it. When I took that perspective when I wrote the book, um, and I didn't have much of a plan. I knew kind of what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say it, how I wanted to get it across, but I didn't sit down for any significant period of time and plan it out. What are the chapters going to be? What are the contents of each chapter? All that stuff. I just started to
Hmm.
do it, and that's how it got done. Done is better than perfect. And there's always a chance, an opportunity to perfect something later on, but if you don't start it, you're never going to get that opportunity. There's a lot of things that could be accomplished by a lot of people if they just set out and started.
For sure. Perfect. Yeah, so there you go. Just do it. Um,
Yep.
so, how can people reach you and what services do you provide? I know you kind of touched on that already.
Yeah. So smithman.net, we can be contacted through there. And again, there's a lot of information that you can read up on about the strategy. As far as what I provide, I've set up a Canada-wide network of Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals, as I think I mentioned. So I'm training up realtors, investment advisors, mortgage brokers, mortgage conveyancers, insurance agents, and accountants. So basically all the types of professionals that a Canadian should be surrounding themselves with anyways, whether they're doing the Smith Maneuver or not. But in these different cities and towns across Canada, we're going to have all of these professionals who have been trained in the Smith Maneuver. So they're going to really be able to help the homeowner implement the strategy by not only being able to expertly implement the strategy, depending on their profession, but they'll be able to coordinate with the other Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals in the area. So a mortgage broker will work with the realtor, who will work with the investment advisor, who will work with the accountant. So now the homeowner is surrounded by financial professionals who they all speak the same language. And there's a great deal of comfort in that for a Canadian homeowner, where they know they don't have to, excuse me, train up their other professionals who maybe haven't heard of the Smith Maneuver.
Hmm.
So yes, you can contact us through the website, even if you just want someone to provide more guidance. But if you want someone, after you read the book and do a little research, if you want someone to help implement it, get in touch with us and we'll connect you with Smith Maneuver certified professionals in your area.
Awesome. Yep. So, like I said, it's all going to be linked in the show notes. So, Rob, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you sharing the Smith Maneuver with us.
Well, it's been a pleasure. 40, 45 minutes or however long is typically not enough. There's a lot to go through,
Yeah.
but again, thank you very much, George, for allowing me this opportunity and doing your little bit to get the word out to Canadian homeowners that this strategy is available to them.
My pleasure. We'll talk soon, Rob.
Thanks, George.
Thanks once again for listening to another episode of the Well Off Podcast. Just want to remind you that if you do appreciate the content, all I ask is that you comment, maybe like it if you can on the platform that you're listening to it on, and finally share it with friends and family. I'd love to get the message out there, and it would mean a lot if you can share it. And finally, I just wanted to offer you, as a valued listener, a free copy to the Roadmap to Real Estate Investing, which is a document that I've put together which helps you identify what strategy would best suit your needs at this current time. You go over certain things that are included in this document step by step, and it'll hopefully provide you with some clarity. So have a look. You can go to www.welloff.ca/guide to download your free copy.